All right, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am Is There No One Else, and I'm bringing you the 5.1.0 patch notes for Scalebreaker. They came out early. Normally they come out on Mondays. They have a note here, so in order to squash the ongoing rumors surrounding certain leaked patch notes and what might be real or fake, we've decided to publish the real patch notes the Saturday evening before the PTS update for Scalebreaker and Update 23. The responsible party associated with these leaks is no longer a part of our programs or community and has been introduced to our friends in the legal department. All associated PTS feedback and bug threads will be published on Monday during maintenance. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Good luck to that person. Anyways, as you guys know, if you watch my patch notes, I don't go through everything. I look at the gear, and I look at the balance changes as it pertains to PvP. If there's anything that's interesting that catches my eyes that goes on, I will discuss it, but I try to make these a little bit shorter because especially the first initial patch notes are really long. So let's dive into it because these are going to be quite massive. They got 2 new dungeons, new item sets. So first set, Hollow Fang's Thirst, 2-piece spell crit, 3-piece max magicka, 4-piece spell crit. 5, whenever you critically heal or critically damage a target, spawn a ball of hemoglobin at their location. After 2 seconds, the ball explodes, restoring 3470 magicka and applying minor vitality to you and your allies within 6 meters of the ball for 9 seconds, increasing their healing received by 8%. This effect can occur once every 9 seconds. This is a pretty good set, guys. It doesn't seem like it. But this would be pretty good for a healer. This would also be good, for a group of magicka-based classes. So basically, when you damage somebody, as long as you guys are all in the area focusing that same person, this ball of hemoglobin is going to drop, and it's anybody within 6 meters is going to get 3470 magicka every 9 seconds. Which, if we pull up our handy dandy calculator, just to show you exactly what it is. But if we do 3470 and we divide it by 4.5, we get 771 recovery out of this set. So it can happen every 9 seconds. It can occur, it lasts for 9 seconds. It can happen once every 9 seconds. So you could basically have almost 100% uptime with this set. On top of that, you get minor vitality. A healer can utilize this by critically healing people with mutagen or healing springs or whatever. As long as people are stacked in the group, you're going to get this buff. And the 2, 3, and 4 piece is solid damage as well. So it's a pretty good set for magicka sustain. Like if you're playing with 2, 3, 4 people and you're all magicka classes, one person running this is pretty useful, in my opinion. Medium set, Drozakar's Claws. Physical Pen for the 2-piece, weapon crit stamina recovery. Great 2, 3, and 4 piece. 5-piece for every bleed effect you have on an enemy. Increase your weapon damage by 200 against them. This is going to be a very powerful set, guys. I looked at it before. People are going to automatically look at this set with Master's weapons. So Master's 2H and Master's Dual Wield. Because you can get bleeds from Rending Slashes. You can get bleeds from Master's Axes. You can get bleeds from the 2H axe. And you can get bleed from Carve. So those 4, you get 800 weapon damage against them just by doing a carve, like light attack carve, light attack rending slashes. You can have up to 800 damage against them with just those 2 dots. So yeah, it's gonna be pretty damn effective, pretty powerful. Obviously, it's gonna be good on a werewolf as well. This set will be used quite a bit, in my opinion. Reynald's Resolve, max health, healing taken, max health. When you deal direct damage, gain a stack of Resolve for 10 seconds. Each stack increases your healing taken by 10% and your physical and spell resistance by 420. You can only gain 1 stack of Resolve every 1 second. You can only have up to 8 stacks of Resolve. So this turns out to like 3,200 resistances and 8% healing taken. I don't think the 5-piece is enough. I could be wrong. It's not bad, but it's not great either. Monster Mask, Grindwolf, weapon and spell crit. 2-piece whenever you deal critical damage. Restore 1,000 magicka or stamina, whichever maximum is higher. You also gain 500 of the other resource. This effect can occur once every 5 seconds. This set's also interesting because what it turns out to is roughly, 400 magic or stamina recovery, whichever the higher stat pool is. So if you're a magicka-based class, you're going to have 400 magicka recovery. If you're stamina, you're going to have 400 stamina recovery. So pretty powerful in that department. But on top of that, you get 500 of the other resource, so it's 200 of the off stat. So this is going to be useful. literally on any class, because most stamina-based classes, whether you're a Stam Sork using Dark Deal and Streak, if you're a Stam DK using Igneous and Volatile and potentially Cauterize, if you're a Nightblade using Cloak and Shade, everybody has like that off-stat sustain, and Magicka classes need the stamina sustain in order to, stay alive and not be CC'd to death. This is going to be a great recovery set. 400 and 200 is solid across the board for any class, and then the one piece is great for the weapon crit as well. So I think this is going to be useful. I don't know if it's, a lot of people are going to stick to their blood spawn and everything, but this is a very, very useful set, in my opinion, for a lot of builds. Layer of Marsalok, Zen's Redress. This is the light armor set in the other dungeon. Magic recovery, spell damage, maximum magicka. 2, 3, and 4 pieces, great. 5. Your light attacks apply Eye of Zen on enemies for 20 seconds. Enemies with Eye of Zen take an additional 2% more damage for each damage over time effect you placed on them, up to 10%. 10% more damage for the 5-piece set. So like we talked about actually yesterday when I was talking about Essence Thief, it's 10% of, up to 10% of your damage. And so that's your combination of your max magic and your spell damage, which in a lot of cases, this is going to be one of the most powerful 5-piece sets in the game as far as like overall damage that it's going to apply to. 10% is a lot, guys. Like, if we look at my, Magicka Nightblade build, where I have 60,000 Magicka and 2,700 spell damage. So it's like roughly almost 9. Basically, like it's roughly 10 to 1. 10 max magicka equals 1 spell damage. It's like 10.4 if I remember correctly, but rough numbers, you can do 10 to 1. This set on that build, 10% of that is like, what is that? Almost 900 spell damage. So the thing that this is, in order to get the 10%, you need to have 5 damage over time effects. And so if we look at it as like on a Magicka DK, Burning Embers is a damage over time effect. If you hit them with Entropy, that's 2. Burning Breath is 3. Lock 'em in Talons, that's 4. And then the Burning Status effect is 5. So it'll be really easy in general to do this on a Mag DK. Magicka Nightblade, you can do Entropy, Cripple, you could do Twisting Path. So you can get 3 there. So it may not be as good on a Magicka Nightblade because I can't really think of another one you can get like readily. I mean, you'd have to use like Wall of Elements or something like that. And at that point, is it worth having? Having that many ground-based things. But the 10% is worth getting on a few dot-based classes. You can run a lot of dots on a few classes, so I think this could be a very effective set. Medium, Azurblight Reaper. Weapon crit, max stamina recovery. When you deal damage with a damage over time effect, you apply a stack of Blight Seed to your target for 5 seconds. At 20 stacks, the Blight Seeds explode, dealing 11,000 disease damage to the target and nearby enemies. An enemy that has reached 20 stacks cannot be infected with Blight Seed for 2 seconds. So cool. You get a 2-second reprieve after this blows up. Obviously, 2, 3, and 4 Ps are great. 11,000 is at base. This should scale higher. We'll put it on the PTS and we'll see what it does. But this is essentially free burst damage to a set. So and you're gonna say 20 stacks, like that's a lot. If you're a Stam Sork running a dot based build, like bow and dual wield. If you're any sort of dot build running like Rending Slashes, Noxious Breath, Burning Claw, or not Burning Claw. Venomous Claw, like you have 3 or 4 dots on somebody, this is going to stack really quickly. And so you're going to have really nice bleed damage or burst dot damage, and then you're going to have the burst damage with this set. So I don't think it's more effective than the other dot-based set above, but this is definitely an interesting combination. We'll have to see how high this scales, because if this goes up to like 20k, it's going to be pretty fucking broken, in my opinion. So we'll see. Dragon's Defilement. 2-piece max stamina, 3-piece max stamina, 4-piece max health. 2, 3, and 4 piece is solid for a heavy set. 5-piece, when you take damage from a melee attack, gain a corrupting aura for 5 seconds that applies minor fracture and minor breach to all enemies near you, lowering their physical and spell resistance by 1320. This isn't a bad set, guys. Even as like a damage set, like getting minor fracture and minor breaches is pretty solid to go with max stam. Definitely interesting. It's just as even like a heavy armor class that you play in a group, you kind of buff everybody around you. And on top of that, like, you know, you get some pen out of it, so you're going to do more damage with the 5-piece, and then the two and 3 pieces, you know, solid damage as well. So not bad. And then finally, the creme de la creme of this entire patch, Marsalak. Excuse me. 1-piece is max stamina. 2-piece, when you bash an enemy, you spew a cone of corruption, dealing 8,000 disease damage to enemies. This damage is increased by 5% for each negative effect the enemies have, up to 150% additional damage. This effect can occur once every 7 seconds. So, when you guys are looking at the set, you're like, wow, 8,000 disease damage is a lot. If I use Sword and Board and I use Light Attack, Ransack, Bash, every 7 seconds I get to do 8,000 plus disease damage. On top of that, the damage is increased by 5% for each negative effect. So a negative effect isn't just a damage over time effect. It can be fracture, it can be vulnerability, it can be defile, it can be anything like that. And so if you watch my old DK build as an example, when I was running a lot of dots, I was running, you know, Noxious Breath is 2 effects, 2 negative effects. It's major fracture, and it's a damage over time effect. If you use Venomous Claw, that's another damage over time effect. If you use Reverberating Bash, it's 2. It's a snare, and it's a defile. And then if you use Heroic Slash, it is also a snare. So that's 6 negative effects just for using 2 dots, Light Attack, Heroic Slash, and then on top of that, you know, a Reverberating Bash. I was running 12 negative status effects with that build. If you put 1 point in a Siphoner, that goes from 6 to 7. And so you can then, just with that little combination that I just mentioned, guys, you buff this set by 35%, which, you know, puts it over 10k disease damage every 7 seconds. So it's very, very effective. And you start looking at stacking Marsalak with this setup here. So each time you impact a bleed with them, like you do 800 more damage, and then you have all these negative effects. Like if you're applying negative effects to somebody, this is just going to be nasty. Like it won't be hard to have a lot of negative effects on somebody. Like if you're fighting in a group, somebody's going to take all of the negative effects. Like it's tough to get everything off of you, and so getting hit with this, you're going to get hit with like 10 to 15k disease damage. So I'm not a huge fan of this with the way it's currently set up, to be honest, because this just promotes XV1 gameplay. You know, somebody running this set is going to do a ton of damage because everybody else is defiling them and buffing them down, and now they're impacted by a lot of negative effects, so then this scales even higher. But yeah, this is the strongest set, in my opinion, out of all the sets they've talked about. New collectibles, new titles, multi-crafting, which is awesome. They should have done this a while ago. So now, just great. Multi-bidding on guild traders. Also, we got new collectibles, updated item sets. So they updated some old item sets. Some of these are pretty good, so we'll go through them. Everybody knows the old Phoenix. When you died, you got to respawn back to life. It did some fire damage. New one, when you drop below 25% health, gain a damage shield that absorbs 10,000 damage for 6 seconds and deals 12,500 flame damage to nearby enemies. This effect can occur once every 1 minute. I was told that people from their no-death runs for like hard modes and stuff were actually running Phoenix because it was essentially a free do-over. And so as long as you didn't die within a minute, you could respawn and you could come back. And so this kind of prevents that. Like you get a damage shield, it's still powerful, but it's not just a mulligan every minute. So not really an impact in PvP. Not a ton of people were running Phoenix, and especially in PvP, when they turn into a Phoenix, you could just kill them again really quickly because they were at low resources. So not a big deal there, but I think for PvE this made some sense. Way of martial knowledge. When you deal damage, you cause the enemy to take 10% additional damage for 2 seconds. So it's pretty good on a Sork. This effect can occur once every 4 seconds. Now, while your stamina is below 75%, your light attacks cause the enemy to take 10% additional damage for 4 seconds. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds. So like I said before, 10% additional damage is a lot. It can be a lot of damage. It can be higher than a lot of sets. on its own. While your stamina is below 75% isn't hard to do. When you're fighting, typically you're not at max stamina. And so, if you CC break once, you'll essentially be below this 75% threshold. So in your light attack, it lasts for 4 out of 6 seconds. So you're going to have really good bursts with this. Martial Knowledge looks really solid, guys. It looks really, really good, especially if you stack this with another damage set, like high damage set, to amplify this 10% as much as possible. Elemental Succession. This was the old one in Maelstrom Arena. The new one is whenever you deal Flame, Shock, or Frost damage, you gain 500 spell damage for that element for 4 seconds. This effect can occur every 8 seconds per element. You can have multiple different elemental buffs active simultaneously. Same thing as before, you use Force Pulse for this, and so you'll have all 3 of these active. I don't know if it's that good. You get 500 spell damage for 4 seconds, but you can only get it every 8 seconds. So I don't know. I mean, it could be effective, but you have to go farm Maelstrom, and you got to go do all that. And they're like, I've already named 3 light sets that I would rather run over Elemental Succession in this build video. So, in my opinion, of course. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that that's my opinion. Overwhelming Surge. Okay. This one's the most ridiculous. I just read it earlier, and I had to do a mulligan on the patch notes and whatever. So, I'm not going to have that same shocked reaction, but this is ridiculous. But Overwhelming Surge has always been powerful. It's always been one of the most powerful 5-piece sets in the game for single target. When you activate a class ability, you have a 15% chance to surround yourself in a torrent that deals 1892 shock damage to the closest enemy within 12 meters every 1 second for 6 seconds. This effect could occur once every 6 seconds. So that was the old one. So a single target, it pulled Nightblades out of stealth, it did a bunch of damage, it could proc minor vulnerability, very effective. The new one, when you deal damage with a class ability, you have a 33% chance. So they more than doubled the proc chance on a class ability to surround yourself with a torrent that deals 1,040 shock damage to enemies within 12 meters of you every 1 second for 6 seconds. So they doubled the proc chance, they cut the damage roughly in half, but here's the thing. It says shock damage to the closest enemy for the old one. This one just says shock damage to enemies. So it went from single target to AoE. So now you're doing AoE damage every 1 second for 6 seconds. 15% of the damage you deal this way is restored to you as magicka. This effect can occur every 6 seconds. So it lasts for 6 seconds with a 6-second cooldown, meaning you can have almost 100% uptime on Overwhelming Surge. And I want to see how it procs, but if it is AoE and you're damaging multiple people, like let's say you're hitting 2, 3, 4 people, this 15% restored to you as magicka is going to be a huge, huge return. So yes, it doesn't do as much damage, but it does damage to everybody, and it's a sustained set that just lasts. It's just going to be up all the time because of the proc rate and because of the cooldown. So Overwhelming Surge, once again, very powerful set. It's just more powerful in a different way, in my opinion. Trinamax Valor. This was another set that was kind of just shitty. When you cast a damage shield on an ally, you have a 20% chance to call down a fragment of Trinamac that heals you and your allies for 67 health and damages enemies for 67 magic damage. New one, when you cast a damage shield ability, you call down a fragment of Trinamac that heals you and your allies for 4,000 health and damages enemies for 4,000 magic damage in a 5-meter radius. This effect can occur once every 5 seconds. This is powerful. Like, you can backbar this set. If I remember correctly, the 2, 3, and 4 piece for Trinamax isn't bad either, but you can backbar this set, and literally, like, wherever you're standing, you're going to get a heal, and you're going to do magic damage. I don't think that's a ton. Like, it's not going to be a lot in PvP, so it's interesting. It's interesting in the right direction, for sure. We'll have to test it, but yeah, like, this is basically off a shield cooldown. Like, once your shields go down, you put another one back up and you get a heal. So, yeah, it's just, the only thing is it's only 4,000 health at base, so we'll have to see if the scale's higher. I haven't messed with Trinamac in a long time, so this is just something worth looking at, but it has some potential. Sench's Bite. Sench was the roll dodge. You get 500 weapon damage and weapon crit. New, when you use roll dodge, increase your critical damage by 12% for 8 seconds. Wow. Okay. Sench's Bite coming in with the changes. Kind's Kiss used to be garbage. New one, when you deal direct damage while 12 meters or further from your target, you have a 15% chance to heal for 1,000 health and restore 1,000 stamina. So this is no longer a melee proc condition. The set will always drop in bows and staves. Okay. Okay. I mean, it's not bad, but I don't think it's worth running. Heavy, Eternal Warrior. When you drop below 25% health, you heal for 12,500 and gain 100 ultimate. That's a lot better than the old Eternal Warrior. 100 ultimate when you drop below. That's interesting. That is very interesting. Eternal Warrior looks not bad. Immortal Warrior. While your health is below 35%, gain major protection, reducing damage you take by 30%. Wow. Wow. Okay. So yeah, you're going to have some really tanky people that are really hard to kill at low health with a set like that. 7th Legion Brute. They changed it. 7th Legion's always been one of the more powerful PvP sets. Very near and dear to my heart. I've been running it for years. Let's see what the new set is. When you cast an ability that increases your physical or spell resistance, you gain 350 weapon damage and 350 health recovery for 10 seconds. This effect can occur every 10 seconds. Okay. So they got rid of some of the burst off the set. Obviously. Because it used to be 500 weapon damage and now it's 350. But the thing is, guys, is it's easy to proc. Really easy to proc. Like, if you think about it, your volatile armor, I can't remember how long it lasts, but every time you proc your volatile armor, you're going to get this buff. And it's not just 350 weapon damage, you now get this health recovery. So instead of the heal, you get the health recovery for 10 seconds, which makes you more tanky. This is more damage in Hunting's Rage. It's easy to proc. If you're a Stamplar, you put your rune down, Stamp Sork, you use Hurricane. Nightblade, you just cast a Shadow ability, if I remember correctly. So if you fear or whatever, you get your resistances. This will be easy to proc, and it procs all the time. And so this is still a good set, guys. They just got rid of the burst, and they gave you a little bit of survivability with the health recovery. So not bad. Obviously, they nerfed the damage. People are going to be really upset because they're going to be like, "Oh wow, you nerfed our 500 weapon damage." It's 350, guys. It's not a big difference. It's easy. I like this ability to proc it better than taking damage, because my problem with 7th and Fury has always been that when you put burst on somebody and they go on the defensive, your 7th Legion or your Fury procs come down, and then all of a sudden they're on the defensive and they're healing and you can't finish them. Now you choose, essentially, as long as you stay buffed, you can dish out this damage. And so I like this proc condition better than the old proc condition, to be honest. Armor of the Veiled Inheritance, another great armor set. New, when you interrupt an enemy, you gain 500 weapon damage for 5 seconds. This is now garbage. If you have Armor of the Veiled Inheritance, it is now officially garbage the way it is currently set up. You just do not interrupt enemies that well. There's not many skills that you interrupt them on. If somebody's right in front of your face hitting you with Radiant, you can interrupt them and you get 500 weapon damage for 5 seconds. And hopefully they spam you with Radiant immediately afterwards. But outside of that, you're just not really interrupting a whole lot of people. Unless you want to be that guy that bashes revives nonstop. But yes, this set is officially garbage. Rest in peace, Veiled Inheritance. You are no longer valuable in PvP to anybody that wants to do damage. So hopefully they change this back, because, yeah, this is garbage. Absolute garbage. Ravager. Ravager's always been great. The new proc set is each time you attempt to reduce the target's physical or spell resistance, you gain a stack of Ravager for 5 seconds, increasing your weapon damage by 125. You can gain a stack every second. At 4 stacks, the duration doubles but cannot be refreshed. So the first thing that comes to mind with this, doing a Crusher enchant, like rocking a Crusher enchant with an infused weapon. It's probably one of the best ways to buff this set. Ransack works, obviously. You know, if you use Power of the Light, that will debuff their resistances. What other... obviously, your Subterranean Assault on a Warden will give you a stack as well. This will be one that we have to test because it's 4 stacks, so 4 times 125, so it's 500 weapon damage. So it's a small nerf to damage. But it's a guaranteed proc. So anytime you use the Crusher and you have the Crusher enchant up, you will gain another 125. At 4 stacks, the duration doubles but cannot be refreshed. So when you get to the max stack, this will now last for 10 seconds. And so in some ways, this looks like it's a buff to the overall damage. It's not as much burst when it's procced, but you'll have the procs up more often. Because an 8% chance isn't a lot, guys. But you know, if you're rocking a Crusher enchant, if you're using Ransack, if you're using something that gives you major fracture, or you know, like debuffs their armor, you can actually buff this quite a bit. So just through your weaving, every 5 seconds you're going to get these stacks. So it'll be 125 for 5, and then 250 for 5, 375, and then 500, and that's 500 for 10 seconds, and it goes off, and then you reset it. So as long as you're, you know, weaving, you're going to be able to buff this set. And so I don't think this is bad, guys. I know a lot of people are going to complain about Ravager. I totally understand. You just have to build it a slightly different way. That's all I'm saying. Like, you just have to build it a little bit differently. Ravager's still going to be good. It is not Veiled Heritance, okay? Veiled Heritance, garbage. Ravager, different, in my opinion, of course. New houses, new furnishings, new titles, new achievements, Dragon Guard's Legacy, skill lines for alternate characters. Fully completing a skill line on one character now unlocks the ability to purchase that achievement and skill line on another character. Once unlocked on your current character, the chosen skill line immediately advances to its maximum rank. All abilities contained within the purchase. Okay, so they did this with Sky Shards. This is an interesting idea for leveling up characters. So if you want to level up your Sword and Board, you can now level up Sword and Board really quickly. If you want to switch from Magic to Stamina instead of going to Grind and Skyreach, you can now purchase it. Interesting options. Definitely intriguing for somebody that never really uses their crowns, even though they're an ESO Plus member like me. So it's nice. It's a nice change of life, quality of life change. I really appreciate that, actually. So less grinding, but you do have to pay for it. All right, combat and gameplay, guys. We are 25% into the patch notes and about 25 minutes into this video, and we just got the combat and gameplay. So let's see what it is. Many of the adjustments you'll find below are a result of our ongoing ability audit to adhere to standards for overall balance, quality of life, as well as some fixes for issues that required further investigation from Update 22. Okay. Necromancer, Gravelord, Blastbones. Remove the delay of the skeleton summoned from this ability in S'mores before it would attempt to leap to its target to help reliability. So as soon as you summon it, it's going to jump. Reduce the minimum range of the leap to 7 meters from 5 meters to reduce situations where the Blastbones becomes confused on what to do, causing it to stand still, pondering its own existence. Okay. So Blastbones is supposed to be more effective next patch. We will test this on the PTS on Monday to make sure that this is true. Boneyard, increase the cost of this building its morphs to 3780 from 3510. Okay. Decrease the damage by approximately 32% per tick. Boneyard does hit pretty hard. Increase the bonus damage modifier for consuming a corpse to 50% from 20%. Okay. Interesting. Pestilent Colossus. Reduce the escalating damage bonus each hit this morph deals. The total adjustment will result in an approximate 5% damage reduction. Okay. Pestilent Colossus, guys, is one of the most powerful ultimates in the game. You know, just the fact that it does major vulnerability. Even if it did no damage, an ultimate that does an AoE effect that provides major vulnerability for other people is a valuable, valuable ultimate in PvP. I mean, just dropping an ult and then having your group drop Dawnbreakers that hit 30% harder is very, very valuable. But on top of that, this ultimate hits hard as shit. It's like 10k, 12k, 15k. So you have an AoE ultimate that does like 35k damage. That you don't always see because the animations in PvP are laggy as shit, and it does major vulnerability. You just nuke people with this ultimate. And there's not much they can do sometimes, especially and no CP. Like in Battlegrounds and stuff, this ultimate is ridiculous. This needs more of an adjustment. Like it needs more than 5% damage reduction. I'm sorry. Like it could go, you could lose 50% of the damage on this, and people will still run this in PvP and in PvE because of the other modifier that it gives. So, yeah, we need we need more Pestilent Colossus nerfs, in my opinion. Skeletal Mage, increase the base cost to 4320 from 2430, and increase the damage per tick by approximately 90%. Okay. Skeletal Archer, the Archer's base damage no longer ranks up by 1.1%. Reducing the scaling bonus to 2% per hit from 10%, which ranks up to 5%. Okay. Shocking Siphon. Okay, updated hitboxes. Bone Tyrant, Bitter Harvest. The heal from this ability and its morphs is now properly synced up with Essence you absorb, resulting in less of a delay. Increase the healing per tick by approximately 11%. Bone Goliath Transformation. Fix an issue where you could occasionally become stuck as a terrifying giant after casting this ability its morphs and never return to your frail humanoid form. You must now find other ways to usher terror into Tamriel. Okay. Living Death, Rend Your Flesh. Fix an issue where the Befouled Star from the Shadow Tree was applying to the minor defile from this ability and its morphs. Restoring Tether. This ability and its morphs no longer have a resource cost and now scale off your highest offensive stats. Decrease the healing per tick by approximately 14%. That's a good call. Reduce the stamina return per tick to 35 from 79. That's a good call. Spirit Mender. Increase the cost of this abilities and its morphs to 4320 from 2430. Okay. And increase the healing per tick by approximately 90%. Spirit Mender is very powerful, so I guess that makes sense. Exploration and itemization, quests and zones. Dungeons, quests and zones, combat and abilities. Wow. Well, I'm going to take a drink of coffee here, guys. In the theme of our ongoing ability audit, many of this update's ability adjustments have been set on the goal of bringing values such as healing or damage to be more consistent with one another. We believe that auxiliary effects and passives that are paired with these abilities are the primary means of adding depth and variety to each individual ability, while the core function should remain relatively close so you have an easier time discerning effectiveness of these abilities, and there are less overall situations of dead abilities. Okay? I agree with this so far. Many changes you'll see also strive to add more consistency to the behavior of how these abilities interact with things like critical strike chance or scaling mechanisms, in hopes to remove some of the many hidden expertise moments where some abilities just feel weaker for certain builds because of arbitrary mechanisms and required failure to learn. This being said, we also want to make it clear that our standards are not unflinching, and just because we've done a passive abilities with the audit, it doesn't mean we'll never return to them or make adjustments. The goal of standardization we have had with Update 21 and 22 is not under the guise that our standards are perfect, but rather the focus on consistency and order. The concept of balance is highly contextual, so we've taken the stance of reining in the varied behaviors of our incredibly dynamic game so we can do a better job moving forward with addressing abilities that fall out of line. So, long story short, they just wanted... Different classes have self-heals or damage-dealing effects, and so they just put them more in line with each other so that if you play one class and you hop on another, you understand what the other abilities do or weapon abilities or whatever so that, you know, there's not a learning curve to know if a skill is good for a specific class or whatever. So it makes a lot of sense. I actually, we'll have to see exactly how they incorporate all this, but it makes a lot of sense to me. General. Increase the duration of the off-balance effect on all of its player sources to 7 seconds from 5 seconds to improve the window it may be interacted with. All right. We're still investigating additional messaging improvements to help make it more obvious when it activates. Off balance is in the CP tree, toppling charge, the scythe for necromancers also provide off balance. Interrupting somebody can also set them off balance, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, you do 10% more damage. It's very, very nice. All player sources of bleeds will now respect a target's physical resistance. Many adjustments have made to ensure bleeds deal similar damage to other damage over time effects. So, no longer will bleeds go through all resistances. It will now respect your resistance. This change was done to reduce the volatility of effectiveness of these abilities in PvE and PvP. Ignoring mitigation was detrimental to this due to high swings of character optimization with varying builds while always being static while fighting monsters, leaving many dead zones and problem spaces. We're aware of the concerns of high mitigation that is currently obtainable in the game, and we target some other areas such as oblivion damage to offset the loss of these tools. Alright, so this makes a lot of sense. So because they now are affected by physical resistance, all bleeds are now a lot less effective than they currently are with the way it currently is. So I'm expecting an incoming buff to bleeds because of this. So when you see the bleed buff, don't freak out if there is one. But yeah, this is now a huge change. You will now no longer become stuck sprinting if you manage to be accosted by a guard while sprinting, even though you were pretty terrified. All right. Ground target abilities will now be unqueued after weapon swapping. This should help reduce situations where you could become stuck casting one of these abilities, such as Grand Healing or Lightning Splash. All right. Fix numerous instances where well-timed abilities, uses from charges, leaps, teleports, blanks, and pulls could allow you to bypass collision. All right. Many damage over time abilities, both single target and area of effect, have been re-standardized to follow similar behaviors to other ability types. Area of effect damage over times will now be 33% weaker than a single target dot counterpart and cost 30% more, just like direct damage AoEs versus single target ones. Thank you. The duration of these damage over... Okay, so I'm not going to read the spoiler because we all know what this means. In general, this is one of my biggest problems in PvP is AoE effects are doing too much damage compared to single target effects. So like if we look hypothetically at the Nightblade tool, Nightblade toolkit, we look at surprise attack. If you have like let's say you have like a 10k surprise attack that's a single target ability, if you use power extraction instead, it's like 93 or 9500 for power extraction. The difference is instead of, it being single target and potentially being dodge rolled or whatever, you will always hit them because it's a big AoE and it hits everybody in the area. So essentially you have a surprise attack for everybody in your group as a Nightblade using power extraction instead of surprise attack. And it's the same problem with like Whirling Blades. Like if you look at Whirling Blades, all you have to do is hit with a Dawnbreaker and go with Whirling Blades, and your Whirling Blades is going to hit harder than a Heroic Slash. And it's going to hit everybody. And so I've always been of the belief that single target abilities should do more damage than AoE abilities. And I'm not saying that AoE abilities shouldn't be in the game because that's the only way you can wipe large groups of people. I totally agree with that. But right now it just makes too much sense to be an AoE based build because they do more damage. They just do more damage to everybody than a single target build. And so single target builds are, I like running them, but they're not as effective. And so having area of effect dots being 33% weaker than single target makes sense while also costing more. It makes a lot of sense. Adjust the animations and cast times for many ultimates that are meant to have high impact and better synchronize their attacks to their animations. Okay. Improve the responsiveness of leaving or CC breaking knock up and knockback abilities and increase the standard range of a knockback to 8 meters from 6 meters. Fix numerous issues where area of effect based damage over time abilities were being considered direct damage in some circumstances. They will now always be treated as damage over time. All right. This will help their tooltips reference proper modifiers such as Thaumaturge. Excellent. Pets will now properly gain the 5,000 health from Battle Spirit rather than having their max health increased by 5,000 but not healing for the difference. Fix an issue where... Okay. Sources of stamina, health, and magic cost reduction that are obtained from passives, abilities, or item sets are now all multiplicative rather than being a mixture of additive and multiplicative. This was done for a more streamlined behavior across the board and limit the opportunity to reduce an ability's cost to 0 by stacking multiple sources of cost reduction. Below is the list of the affected sources that also had adjustments made to them, since this will ultimately increase cost of abilities when using multiple sources of cost reduction. Okay. All right. Armor of the Seducer, 10% cost reduction instead of 8. Isamaris, 15 instead of 12. Vampire Lord, 6 to 5. Okay. Okay. So we'll have to go look at those sets in general. Seducer's kind of fallen out of vogue in general in PvP and stuff, so this isn't a huge difference. Resource agnostic sources of healing will now use your highest critical strike chance rather than defaulting to your spell critical only. Okay. The abilities listed below now properly use precise strikes to scale rather than Elfborn since they are stamina abilities. Okay. That all makes sense. Player-sourced Oblivion damage now deals its damage based on the target's effect and max health with a maximum damage threshold to prevent them from dealing obscene damage against elite-type enemies. Oblivion damage continues to bypass positive and negative bonuses and cannot be blocked or shielded. Decreased health, Oblivion damage enchants. The max health percent these enchants deal will now only scale with the enchantment's quality, common, uncommon, epic. But their maximum damage will scale in the traditional sense where the value is based on your character's level and quality. The maximum bonus of health percentage these enchantments can do is 3.75% at legendary quality, CP 160. The maximum damage they can deal is 4875 damage. Okay. Okay. We'll have to test Oblivion damage enchants as well. Slowed Semblance now deals 3% of the target's max health per tick up to a maximum. Health percentage it deals is now static, while the maximum damage is based on your item set's average level and quality. Okay. Night Slayer, another Oblivion damage set. The set can now proc on any target instead of only players. It continues to deal 8% of the target's max health with a fully charged heavy attack. The maximum damage dealt will scale based on the average item set up to a maximum of 8,000 Oblivion damage. Alright, so we'll have to go look at Oblivion in general. Looks like they changed a lot of it. So basically, their entire goal with Oblivion is it does a bunch of damage if somebody has high health. It doesn't do a ton of damage if you're at a normal build. And so kind of the goal is, you know, those high health tanky targets can now be killed, whereas, you know, other people, maybe it's not as effective as other enchants, which I can get behind, I guess. We'll have to see how effective Oblivion damage is over the other ones. Alright, buffs and debuffs. Major heroism. Fix an issue where some of the sources of major heroism would stack with one another, including Hanu's Compassion and Last Stand passive. Damn. Minor lifesteal. To heal from this bonus will now use the activator's highest critical strike chance rather than only spell crit. Alright. Dragonite changes. Combustion. Decrease the cooldown from this passive to 2 seconds from 5 seconds. This is done to help alleviate many of the duration-based ability cost increases, as well as help this passive synergize with more build customization, such as using the charge trait. Interesting. Fiery Breath. Increase the cost of Fiery Breath to 2808 from 2700. Decrease the dot damage per tick by approximately 15%. So, Fiery Breath is the AoE cone. It's an AoE, so they reduce the damage of the dots. You still have some upfront damage. The Noxious Breath morph is basically a spammable at this point with high weapon damage. Lava Whip. Molten Whip. Reduce the stacking spell damage bonus to this passive to 75 at rank 4 from 125. Okay. So you lose some weapon damage with Molten Whip. Weapon and spell damage. It's actually pretty significant. It's still going to be the better morph, in my opinion, for mag DKs. But yeah, now you just won't have that super high scaling. So I think that makes sense. Searing Strike. Fix an issue where the visual effects from this ability and its morphs would fail to apply if the target was blocking. Increase the cost to 2160 from 1350. Increase the dot damage by approximately 26% per tick. Wow. So Searing Strike is the base morph. They increase the cost, obviously, which makes sense because it's one of the cheapest damage over time effects skills in the game than the stamina or Magicka version. They almost doubled the cost, but it also does 26% more damage. So that means more healing for Burning Embers because it's going to do a lot more damage, but it costs more, so you can't just spam Embers for a heal. That's really interesting. Definitely a big change. It makes sense, though. I think this makes a lot of sense because now it actually costs an ability like other abilities. Like before, it was just stupid cheap. Earth and Heart, Ash Cloud. Decrease the healing of this ability and its morphs by approximately 30%. Ash Cloud nerfs. Increase the cost of all morphs. So double Ash Cloud nerfs. Petrify. Increase cost by a decent amount. Looks like about 30%. This ability no longer ranks up in cost reduction. Instead, it ranks up by 1.1%. Reduce the range of this ability's morphs to 7 meters from 8 meters. Okay. So Once again, Petrify is just an up-close CC that goes through block, and now it's going to cost a decent amount more. Cost increases essentially across the board for Dragon Knights, so definitely going to be something to keep an eye on as far as sustain goes, so definitely interesting. Nightblade changes. Grim Focus. Fix an issue where your Spectral Bow from this ability and Smorphs could consume all your stacks even if you failed to fire the projectile. Reduce the amount of damage mitigation the stacking bonus these abilities provide to 2% from 3%. Good. As I showed you guys in my Nightblade video, you get a shit ton of damage mitigation with this. It's up to 15%. Now it's 10%. So you still get damage mitigation. It's still one of the hardest hitting skills in the game. But yeah, nerfing that mitigation is kind of what needed to happen for a Nightblade, in my opinion. Mark Target. This ability and the Reaper's Mark are now considered one negative effect instead of 3. Piercing Mark will now count as 2. The conditional if the target dies bonus from this ability and Smorphs will no longer proc when used on pets. Rest in peace. Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, that makes sense. Teleport Strike. Decrease the damage per tick of the dot by approximately 22% and fix an issue where the final tick was not being affected by minor vulnerability. Shadow. Concealed Weapon. Fix an issue where casting this ability from crouch would apply the stun to your target but not animate the stun. Alright. Path of Darkness. Twisting Path. Decrease the damage per tick of this ability by approximately 14%. Refreshing Path Morph. That's the one that heals. Fix an issue where this ability could heal you twice per tick after the first heal applied. Increase the healing per tick by approximately 29%, so a bigger heal. Note the heal will be stronger than Twisting's damage potential because Twisting also gains an increased area coverage. Okay. Shadow Cloak. Fix an issue where this ability and the Shadow Disguise Morph could fail to cast if you had Prevent Attacking Innocence turned on. This ability and the Shadowy Disguise Morph now last 3 seconds at base but are no longer affected by the Dark Veil passive. This was done to help low-level characters utilize the skill. Okay. Okay. Summon Shade increased the cost for this ability and its morph to 4,000 from 2,700. Ouch. It's going to be tough for my Stam Nightblade. Dark Shade Morph, reduce the damage hit per Corrosive Flurry by approximately 9%. The area attack Corrosive Slash now deals some damage as the normal attack instead of dealing 20% bonus damage. Alright. Drain Power. This morph no longer increases the damage dealt to the attack, but instead reduces the weapon damage of enemies hit by 300 weapon damage for 8 seconds. 300 weapon damage? Why can't this be weapon? I mean, if you're going to do this, why it should be weapon and spell damage? Like you're going to fight a Magicka class and this is essentially going to do nothing to them, you know? Yeah. Cripple. Decrease the cost of this ability and its morphs to 2970 from 3240. Alright, so Cripple, decrease cost, and increase the damage by approximately 17%. That's a big buff to Cripple, since it's single target, that makes sense. Increase the initial hit damage by approximately 37% to Crippling Grasp, and decrease the dot damage by approximately 2%. So Crippling Grasp is powerful again, okay? Sorcerer, Dark Magic, Crystal Shards. That's the Crystal Frags base. Decrease the base cost of this ability, its morphs to 2970 from 3510. So a buff to Sorks, and decrease the damage by approximately 10%. Okay, so overall that's a nerf to Frags. Crystal Blast, the AoE portion of this ability, does the same damage as the initial hit. Crystal Frags, increase the bonus damage dealt of the proc to this ability from 33% from 20% to retain the damage of this proc. Okay, so they reduce the cost, and they now does the same damage when you proc Crystal Frags. So, okay, buff for Sork. Sorks needed buffs, so it's a good thing they got one there. Conjured Ward. Reduce the shield size of this ability and the Empowered Ward morph by approximately 18%. So here's the nerf that Sorks needed, and increase the cost of this ability and the Hardened Ward morph to 4320 from 3510. These changes were done to make them more comparable to the damage shield burst heal standard. Empowered Ward, Hardened Ward, reduce the shield size of this ability by approximately 9% for Hardened Ward. Okay, So it's 41% damage shield now. This was a much needed change. I was going to do a video on it at some point, but currently the tankiest class in the game that can still 1vx is Pet Sork. You get extra health as a Pet Sork. You can stack a bunch of max magicka as a Pet Sork. Those two things coincide to make very big wards. Hardened Warden gives you 50% 50% of your max health, so you could have 15k wards in PvP with high damage resistances. And on top of that, even if you got through the wards, they had a burst heal with the Twilight or with the Matriarch that could heal for, I got as high as like 16k crit heals. So essentially, like, you had a breath of life on top of really big tanky wards that you could stack. And so this needed to happen. So increasing the cost and all this just puts Sorks more in line. I know people are going to be upset about this, and I get it. Anytime a class is nerfed in some way, people get upset. But Sorks, I think most people know that Sorks are the strongest class in the game. And Pet Sorks right now are essentially like if a Pet Sork doesn't want to die 1v1, they're not going to die. Like it's they can stay on the defensive and they just literally will not die to anybody 1v1. It's just not going to happen. So that's just what the damage shield does. And even if you get them to low health, they can streak. They can streak a couple times with their 50k magicka. They can dark conversion everything back to full, and then they start getting back to casting at you at range. So a lot of things still going on the Sork toolkit. This needed to happen, in my opinion. Rebate fixed an issue where this passive would dismount if you proceed. Summon Unstable Familiar. Decrease the special ability to summon and volatile familiar morph. Okay. Increase the damage per tick by 8%. Damn it. But reduce the damage per tick of volatile by approximately 3% since it was using the wrong rank up. Alright. Summon Winged Twilight. The zap and kick attack from the Twilight and its morphs will now do the same damage to help reduce volatility and performance. Reduce the damage of the Winged Twilight and Twilight Matriarch by approximately 69% per hit. This needed to happen, guys. In my opinion. Twilight Matriarch could do 11k shock damage with Daedric Curse, as well as heal you for 16k. Like, it was... The Winged Twilight was one of the strongest, if not the strongest skill in the game, even if it was a toggle, because of the amount of damage it does and the healing that it does. So reducing this damage by 69% goes from 11k to like 4k. So it still does some damage. It's still worth having because you proc Necropotence. You have big shields and you have a big heal. But now it's just not giving you that free damage without really having to do anything. Summon Twilight Tormentor Morph, reduce the damage dealt by the Twilight Zap and kick by approximately 35%. These attacks will now rank up. Okay. Storm Calling, Bolt Escape. This ability and its morph stuns can no longer be blocked. So we have a buff to frags. We have a nerf to the ward size and the cost. We have a nerf to the Winged Twilight, and we have a buff to Streak. So Streak is an AoE damage effect, and it can no longer be blocked. Really, really effective. So if you're a Sork and you use your combination, your Curse, your Mage's Wrath, your Frag, you drop a Meteor and you streak through them, they cannot dodge roll or block your Streak now. And so you will always CC somebody. Having an unblockable CC is very, very valuable. This is a huge, huge buff to Sorks. Huge buff. Anytime you get an unblockable CC, it is nice. And so Sorks now have it once again. This is very, very effective. So Bolt Escape Fatigue, reduce the ramping cost increase from Bolt Escape or its morphs to 33% stack from 50%. So it operates closer to Roll Dodge. Okay? Overload. The hitbox for these abilities, heavy attacks will now properly update when fighting dragons. Alright, fix an issue where the heavy attack augmented for these abilities was not gaining the 70% damage increase from heavy attacking off-balance enemies. Alright. Lightning Splash. Decrease the cost of this ability and its morphs by 3,024 from 3,510 and decrease the damage per tick by approximately 37%. Liquid Lightning's taking a huge nerf. Alright. Templar changes. We're almost halfway done, guys. Almost halfway done. Adric Spear, Puncturing Strikes reduce the base cost of this ability its morphs to 2,700 from 2,952. Biting Jabs retains the 15% cost reduction. Alright. Cheaper for sweeps, so Templar quality of life improvement. Spear Shards decrease the cost of this ability its morphs to small nerf and cost of Spear Shards. Decrease the dot damage of Spear Shards and Luminous by approximately 37%. So because it's an AoE, it's nerfed. Spear Wall. Increase the duration of minor protection granted from this passive to 3 to 6 seconds from 1.5 to 3 seconds. Okay, so Spear Wall is one of the passives, so when you're using your sweeps or your jabs, you're getting minor protection. You now get that duration longer, twice as long. So once again, another way for Templars to be tankier while they're on the offensive. Dawn's Wrath. Eclipse. Rework this ability in its morph so you will now envelope your target in a sphere of darkness for 4 seconds, which harms them anytime they use a direct damage attack. Their first attack causes the sphere to hinder them, reducing their movement speed by 30%. Their second attack causes the sphere to entangle them, immobilizing them for 3 seconds. Their third attack causes the sphere to smother them, stunning them for 3 seconds. These effects can occur once every second. Okay. Interesting. Note that the sphere can no longer be CC broken early, but can still be cleansed. Okay. So we'll have to go look at this on the PTS. But this is a big change. Please somebody comment this in the comment section. I can't remember exactly what Eclipse currently does. I think it's when they do damage, it does damage back to them while also healing the Magplar. And so total Eclipse is a way of like enveloping them, and then they take damage to themselves. They basically hit themselves, and it also buffs the heals on the Magplar, especially when they're fighting outnumbered. You could hit total Eclipse on multiple people, and if they're bad, it's a way of doing burst while also healing yourself. So in some ways, it was very, very powerful. This is interesting. And so now it's not doing damage. You're now snaring them in place, which is effective for a Magplar or a Templar, because, or well, a Magplar since you're using Eclipse, since they typically don't have movement speed. If they hit them again, it immobilizes them, so now they're stuck in place in your sweeps taking damage. And the third one stuns them for free. Really interesting. We'll have to see how it works. Once again, like, that's an interesting rework. I don't think it's bad. If you're using Eclipse already, I don't think this is a bad change. But we'll have to see exactly what it does. Total Dark Morph. Rename this morph to Living Dark. You now envelope yourself in darkness for 4 seconds, which protects you. Anytime enemies hit you with a direct damage attack, they're immobilized for 3 seconds and you are healed. This heal value has been decreased by approximately 25% to compare to the original value, but can occur every half second rather than every 0.75 seconds. Really? This seems really powerful. So you cast this on yourself, and for 4 seconds, anytime somebody hits you, they get immobilized. This just seems annoying to fight. So you're going to heal them. I don't like this. Like, I'm not saying this. This is bad in that it's just going to make Magplars unnecessarily tanky when they're already unnecessarily tanky. So far, I mean, we don't know what the other changes to the patch notes are, but this is just a way like. You are healed and it immobilizes the person that's attacking you. Like, it's just... Yeah, I don't like that. Unstable Core. Each time the sphere activates on the attacker, they will take damage. This damage increases based on the stage of the sphere is currently in. Okay. Previous iteration of Eclipse was originally meant to be a tool to disincentivize your target from continuously attacking and instead back off or remove the effect. Due to the effect being able to be removed through CC break, it led to very binary performance situations. This new functionality is meant to retain the idea to punish the target from continuously attacking, but with less polarizing gameplay elements for both sides. We also wanted the ability to be used in both PvE and PvP, so we've removed the pseudo crowd control element it once operated from. Interesting. Solar Flare. Increase the damage of this ability in the Dark Flare morph by 4%. Solar Barrage. Decrease the damage of this morph by approximately 33% per tick. Solar Barrage is very effective, but it's also an AoE, so that made sense. Reduce the cost of Vampire's Bane and Reflective Light. Increase the dot damage by approximately 17% per tick, but reduce the initial damage by approximately... Okay. That's quite a bit. Restoring Light, Backlash, Purifying Light Morph, decrease the healing per tick by approximately 29%. Okay. Cleansing Ritual, increase the healing per tick of this ability against morphs by approximately 95%. Wow. Okay. Increase the cost of these abilities to 48.60 from 43.20. Okay. Note these abilities continue to only tick once every 2 seconds instead of the standard 1 second. This is due to the multifaceted operational power this ability boasts. Makes sense. Restoring Aura, fix an issue where the minor endurance and intellect from this ability and smarts were stacking with other sources. Okay. Honor the Dead. Fix an issue where this ability would cause animation stutters when attempting to cast the ability at a target who is using Mist Form or its morphs. Alright. So overall, these Total Dark and Eclipse changes for Templar are pretty intensive. I'd like to see exactly how they work in combat before I really make a comment, but this just looks annoying to deal with now. Like, I'm not saying it's definitely doesn't look bad on paper. It looks good, but it's an annoying good. Like, it's not gonna be fun. Like, you're gonna have to revamp how you deal with Magplars, and Magplars are already like super tanky, high survivability, all this other stuff, and like you add this snares and stuns and all this other shit on top of it, and it's gonna be annoying. Couple cost increases, but they gave you some minor protection boosts, and they reduced the cost of puncturing strikes. So overall, I think they're pretty good changes for Templars in general. Warden, Animal Companion. Reduced passive 2%. Reduce the damage increase per Animal Companion ability slotted 2% from 3%. Alright, Feral Guardian, fix an issue where the Grizzly attacks can become desynced or stuck. Okay, Swarm, increase the cost of this ability and its morphs to 2700 from 2430, and increase the damage per tick by approximately 17%. Wow. So Swarm was already, Fetcher Infection was already hitting really hard. Wow. Growing Swarm Morph. This ability can now infect any nearby enemy from patient 0 rather than only 6 enemies. Okay. So Growing Swarm, Fetcher Infection was the one you wanted to have because it was a great dot tick, and then it did 50% more damage on the next cast. So single target, it was amazing. Growing Swarm is now a really interesting AoE dot when you're fighting outnumbered. So combining Growing Swarm with Permafrost and, not Sub-Assault, but the other one, would be very effective on a Mag Warden, in my opinion. But the thing, okay, so the sneaky thing about this is it does a bunch of damage, but this is technically an AoE because it hits every nearby enemy rather than only 6, and they still buffed the damage per tick. So, yeah, Swarm is now sneaky good, in my opinion. Green Balance, Nature's Grass, decrease the heal over time for this ability and its morphs by approximately 24%. Bursting Vines, increase the burst heal by approximately 13. Okay. Winter's Embrace, increase the heal over time from this ability and its morphs by approximately 66%. Icy Escape, fix an issue where the synergy was not being properly recognized by conditional bonuses. Impaling Shards. Okay. Two-handed Berserker Strike. This is the two-handed ult. This ability and its morphs will now deal damage in a 5-meter radius if the initial hit successfully hits. Note the initial hit can still be dodged since the initial attack is not an AoE. Wow. Wow. Okay. So, it's still a single target ult, but if it lands, it's an AoE ult in 5 meters. This is a lot of burst damage, guys, because as you guys saw in my Stamina Nightblade build, I was hitting 15 to 18k onslaughts pretty regularly. So if I land that onslaught and there's 2 or 3 people around them, they also take all this damage. Wow. Yeah, the only problem with doing onslaught is fighting like severely outnumbered against 5, 6, 7, 8 people because you have to single target people down. And now that if they're stacked on top of each other, it's that risk reward. Like they have to be literally on top of each other for this to work because 5 meters isn't very big. But yeah, I like this type of buff to onslaught because yeah, if you're stacked nut to butt on people, like you should take a ton of damage. I don't mind that. Onslaught morph. This morph no longer refunds the ultimate cost if you gain a killing blow with it. Instead, it converts to physical and spell resistance into physical and spell penetration and increases duration from 8 seconds to a maximum of 16 seconds. Once again, guys, this is a huge buff to a few classes. So I like Onslaught for the way it was because if you got a killing blow with it, you got it back, which allowed you to 1vx with it. So you have the ultimate, so you could get burst combos off while still maintaining the ultimate. And running it with Balorg was awesome because then you could get that extra 300 weapon damage for the 5-piece Balorg set because it's 150 cost. But this is a different kind of strong, guys. So so instead of getting resistances now, you get penetration. And so if you're fighting one of those guys, one of those tanks that has 40k resistances, you now have 40k physical pen. And so literally anybody that you hit with this for 16 seconds, they have no armor. This is ridiculously powerful. And the other thing is it's physical and spell penetration. So meaning, I'm pretty sure a Magicka class can get by running Onslaught on their front bar, because now they're going to have the spell pen, and literally, like, it does a ton of damage, and it's an ultimate, so it's going to scale, with your max abilities. So even a Magic-based class can hit pretty hard with this. It's single target, ignores resistances. It's powerful. It now has the 5-meter radius, and you get physical and spell pen for 16 seconds. That's insane. I am pretty sure that I'm going to try Onslaught on my Magicka DK. Because, yeah, like having 20 to 30k pen and just running like Nern weapons. You do Onslaught and then you lock them down and you dot them up. Like, you're just going to pen them completely, and that's crazy. This is going to be a lot of pressure. Another thing is like Nightblades. You can get off a lot of relentless focuses in 16 seconds. And so with all this pen, it doesn't say it applies to them. It applies to everybody. And so all of a sudden you're going to be running around with like 40k pen and everybody's going to be naked while you're running Onslaught. I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of the most powerful ultimates in the game for small scale PvP. Like, this is ridiculously strong. Ridiculously strong. You have to be good, obviously, and it's a single target. It's not like Dawnbreaker. You're not going to be able to slap like 50 people with it, but very effective. Cleave. Carve. Reduce the damage over time from this ability by approximately 9%. Okay. Critical Charge. Critical Rush Morph. Increase the damage bonus scaling to this ability to 50% from 40%. Okay, so Critical Rush gets a bonus to damage. Stampede. This morph no longer snares enemies hit. Instead, it now crushes the earth beneath you upon reaching your target, causing the area damage to happen every second for an 8-second duration. This ability is balanced around our AoE dot standards. Okay. Executioner. Increase the Executioner multiplier of this ability to 400 from 350. Probably good to have for all those tanky Eternal Warrior builds that are going to be coming out. So when people are at low health, they will now die more quickly with Executioner at low health. Heavy Weapons. The Axe Bleed from this ability now ticks every second instead of every 2 seconds and has had its total damage increased by approximately 24%. Wow. So Axe Bleed buff to go with the new bleed damage set. Okay. Momentum. Reduce the duration of this ability and its morphs to 20 seconds from 30 seconds. Okay. Reduce the cost to 3780 from 4050. Okay. This ability and its morphs will no longer apply a heal over time to you, but will instead grant major evasion for the duration of the major brutality. So I know we're going to get to it. I know there has to be like a shuffle change, but what's the point in running shuffle if your rally and forward momentum now gives you major evasion for 20 seconds? I mean, yeah, you don't get the small heal over time, and that's going to be impacted on a lot of builds. Makes sense. You're going to have to really utilize your vigor more. But that's just like a change in playstyle. And it's not a change in effectiveness, it's just a change in how you play. But now you're just going to be naturally more tanky running rally. Like why does everybody get made? It just doesn't make any sense why every class should have major evasion. Like, people are already tanky enough as it is. Like, I don't get that. For momentum, this morph now reduces in cost as the ability ranks up. Okay, so this is the one that does the snare removal. Rally. Increase the baseline heal from this ability by 100%. But reduce the maximum scaling bonus to 300% from 564. The heal will now require the full 20-second duration to reach the maximum bonus instead of reaching it. Okay, so you have to be smarter with rally in order to get the max heal. So they definitely impacted heals here, but you're going to take a lot less damage by having major evasion. So just having the major evasion buff, in my opinion, makes this a buff overall. I mean, yeah, you don't get the heal over time, you don't get the Yeah, that's ridiculous. Uppercut. So D-swing, reduce the cast time of this ability in its morphs to 0.8 seconds from 1 second to help its reliability when being used in fast combat and melee range. It doesn't seem like a lot, but 0.2 second change is actually pretty nice. So D-swing is gonna be more reliably to land. So I might have to go to D-swing. We'll have to test it. Reduce the base cost to 2,700 from 3,240. So reduce cost on D-swing, which is also nice. Increase the damage from this ability by 9%. So a 10% D-swing buff. Wow. So D-swing is back. This morph will no longer rank up in damage and stun duration. We will have to test this, but this looks solid. One hand and shield. Defensive posture. Rework this ability its morphs into a damage shield rather than a weird buff. These abilities no longer passively reduce the cost to block or increase the amount of damage you can block while they are slotted. Too bad. That's too bad. Reduce the duration of the bonus from this ability to 6 seconds from 30 seconds. Okay. Increase the cost to 4320 from 2430. Wow. The damage shield scales off 30% of your maximum health, similar to other damage shields like Bone Shield or Sun Shield. Wow. Okay, so you can actually have a pretty big damage shield by using defensive posture. This ability will continue to reflect once, but will now reflect any projectile rather than only spell projectiles. Reflecting an attack does not consume the shield. Excellent. Defensive stance. This ability no longer stuns the target if you successfully reflect an attack at them. Okay, absorb magic. This morph is now called Absorb Missile because it can absorb any range attack instead of just magical ones. I like this. Reduce the damage shield size to 30% from 50%. Okay. Increase the heal by approximately 29%. All right, so big changes to defensive posture. The fact that it can reflect everything is nice. It was always annoying when you could reflect range casters, but you couldn't reflect snipers. And now it's a shield instead of reduced block cost and damage mitigation. That's interesting. Fortress, increase the cost reduction bonus from this passive to 7 to 15% from 5 to 10% to match our stamina weapon standards. Okay. Low slash. Reduce the damage dealt from this ability and the heroic slash morph by approximately 31%. These two abilities will also no longer snare targets. Okay. So no longer snaring is nice. But why they need to reduce the damage on low slash just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Minor heroism granted from low heroic slash will now last 12 seconds, up from 9 seconds. Okay. Deep slash. This ability now hits all targets in a 6-meter radius of your target instead of only 2 targets. So you have an AoE. This morph now deals the same damage to all targets hit, and it deals our AoE damage standard. This morph also retains the 30% snare. Okay, so they went ulti-gen versus snare. I still don't like the heroic slash morph because... Okay, first of all, the only way DKs could get a legitimately good heroic slash is if they stacked into weapon damage, like high weapon damage armor sets, like Fury and 7th Legion, and so you could get an 11 to 12k heroic slash. But the thing is like Nightblades can get to 12 to 13 to 14k surprise attacks relatively easy doing the exact same thing. And so... heroic slash has just always been underwhelming as far as like damage goes. And on top of that, they nerfed 7th Legion. They didn't nerf 7th Legion, they nerfed 7th Legion's damage output. And so you're not going to have as much burst with 7th Legion, which means by proxy, your heroic slash isn't going to do as much damage. So they're stacking a nerf with another nerf. And so heroic slash is going to be pretty gross now. Like, this is just not good. Not gonna lie, like this change makes like D-swing almost a must on a DK again, which is too bad because it's still a cast time. Like I'd like to be able to animation cancel. Maybe you go to ransack instead, but this is a huge nerf to heroic slash. Power bash. This ability is now considered a spammable attack, and adjustments have been made to properly place it in that category. This ability no longer stuns. Increase the damage dealt by all versions of the ability by 94%. Okay, so this is our spammable now. Power Bash is now our spammable. You can actually get a decent amount of damage with Power Bash, and they increase the damage dealt. Okay? Reduce the cost, too. Wow. This morph retains a stun with a max duration of 3 seconds, but it no longer applies Major Defile to the target. The initial hit damage is now halved. Okay. Okay. Power Slam, rework this passive. This ability grants. This passive grant is now called Resentment because you're an angry person when you get hit. Resentment activates after blocking any attack. It grants you 5% additional damage on your next Power Slam attack. This bonus stacks up to 10 times, lasts 5 seconds, but you can only gain 1 stack every 250 milliseconds to match the cooldown of block cost cadence. Alright, so Reverberating Bash gets a stun. No longer applies Major Defile, so Reverb isn't as effective as it used to be. The initial hit damage is now halved. Okay. So Power Slam looks like it's now the Sword and Shield spammable. We'll have to look at this, but increasing the damage dealt by 94% with the scaling of Power Slam is very, very interesting. Very interesting. We'll have to find other ways to CC, but yeah, that looks ridiculous. Puncture. Reduce the damage dealt from this ability and its morphs by approximately 37%, but reduce the cost. Yeah, this is just annoying. Like, it's just annoying that you don't have, that these aren't spammables anymore. But increase duration of Major Fracture. This morph no longer grants minor ward, minor resolve. Instead it grants minor protection. Okay. Pierce Armor, the Major Breach from this morph now also lasts 15 seconds. Okay. Shield Charge, Shielded Assault. Increase the shield size from this ability by 20. Okay, so Sword and Shield changes are pretty sweeping and massive. Big rework for defensive posture. Heroic Slash got a huge nerf. Power Bash got a huge buff. Puncture got a nerf in the damage, but it also got a huge nerf in cost reduction. So overall, it seems like it's going to remain relatively unchanged. But like Puncture and Heroic Slash on paper, it just doesn't look like you're going to have the burst that you need to kill somebody with it. So this looks like they look like they're more utility-based skills than damage-based skills. So you get minor heroism for 12 seconds instead of 9 seconds. So you hit this once to get your heroism buff, and then you go into power bashing or D-swinging. So interesting. Very, very interesting. Dual wield Blade Cloak. This ability is shifted into an AoE dot category rather than focusing on being a buff first. Decrease the duration to 8 seconds from 15 seconds. Okay. It's a huge nerf. Reduce the cost. Okay. Decrease the damage tick by approximately 5%, but increase the tick frequency to 2 seconds from 3 seconds. Okay, so it's going to do more damage. Even though it's reduced dot damage, it's going to do it every 2 seconds instead of every 3. So that's more damage. Quick Cloak. On top of granting Major Expedition 4 seconds, this morph now also extends the duration to 10 seconds from 8 seconds, which ranks up to 12 seconds. Okay, so Quick Cloak, you have it for longer. Deadly Cloak. This morph no longer deals increased damage per tick, but instead deals damage every second. And this increases the duration once again. So Deadly Cloak is going to be a much higher damage over time effect. Interesting. Heavy Attack. Fix an issue where you could remain in stealth or invisible after landing a dual-wield heavy attack. Alright. Hidden Blade. Rework this ability from a range spammable into a utility skill. Increase the cost by a lot. Reduce the range to 22 meters from 28 meters. Okay. Reduce the damage dealt from Hidden Blade by 25%. These abilities will now interrupt the target if they were casting an attack. Okay. This ability no longer applies Major Brutality instantly. Instead, enemies hit are marked, and light or heavy attacking a marked target, while dual wielding will grant you Major Brutality for 30 seconds. Okay. Shrouded Daggers. This ability no longer deals increased damage per bounce, but can interrupt any target hit. Interesting. That is very interesting for Shrouded Daggers. This ability now only marks the initial target instead of any enemy hit with the bounce. Each hit deals our AoE damage standard. Flying Blade. The morph allows you to reactivate the ability free of cost on a marked target, which causes you to jump to the target and gain Major Brutality for 30 seconds. This ability is off the global cooldown as well. Alright, interesting changes to that. Lacerate. It's the ultimate. Increase the size of this ability in the Ren morph to 8x8 meters from 8x7. Fix an issue where the heal from all these abilities could critically strike. Thrive in Chaos. Reduce the damage base done. Okay. Okay. Twin Blade and Blunt. The Axe Bleed from this passive now ticks every second instead of every 2 seconds. Increase the total damage by approximately 24%. So, because it's affected by resistances, they now buffed the overall Axe Bleed that you can do, which should still be a nerf overall. So, you could have resistances that mitigate 50% damage, which were being ignored. So now those come into play, so you can have up to 50% damage mitigation. So they buffed it by 24%. It's still a nerf to bleeds. Even though this is a buff to bleeds, like the overall impact of bleeds is still nerfed, in my opinion. Twin Slashes. Increase the damage over time from this ability against morphs by approximately 37%. Wow. Big nerf to Twin Slashes. Wait, I'm sorry, not a nerf. Increase the damage over time from this ability against morphs by approximately 37%. So with the two changes, the Rending Slashes will be relatively unchanged. 50% damage reduction mitigation versus a 37% buff. It's going to make corrosive builds a lot more effective, though, since you can reduce their armor to 0. But outside of that, non-corrosive builds, it's going to really not be much of a change. Bow, Poison Arrow, increase the cost to 2,700 from 2,430. Okay. Decrease the initial hit damage by approximately 17%. Increase the damage over time portion on morphs by approximately 78% per tick. Wow. Poison Injection, reduce the total execute multiplier from this morph to 100% from 200. Okay. So you do more damage over time with a smaller execute. Okay. I'll take that. I'd rather have the stronger dot over the increased execute damage anyways. Since it's easily purgeable by people you really want to do the execute damage on anyways. Rapid Fire. This is the ultimate. Increase the channel damage from this ability in the Toxic Barrage morph by approximately 11% and reduce the channel time to 4 seconds from 4.1. Okay. Toxic Barrage. Remove the delay. Reduce damage. Okay. Ballista morph. Reduce the duration of the turret to 5 seconds from 5.5 seconds and fix an issue where it was double dipping in rank progression. This will result in a minor damage decrease. Okay. Scattershot, this ability is now part of the utility category, with the below changes affect all 3 versions of the ability. Increase cost, reduce the damage, reduce the range, increase the knockback to 8 meters. All right. Increase snipe by 9%. Okay. We can nerf snipe by 100%, to be honest. I hate this skill. So, but it's not been bad in this patch because, it's not doing as much damage. So, makes sense. Volley, this ability in morphs now deal damage every second rather than every half second and increase the damage per tick by approximately 11%. This will result in an overall damage loss. Yep. Reduce the base cost to 2,800 from 3,510. The range on all morphs is now 28 meters. Arrow, Barrage, and Endless Hail. Okay. This Endless Hail, this morph no longer grants cost reduction but now lasts 9 seconds and ranks to 12 seconds. Rather than gaining 1.1% damage per. Okay, so the increased duration will impact PvE. I guess we'll have to see exactly what it does there. Overall, I like the bow changes. They're not big and sweeping, but I like the increased tick on poison injection versus the execute damage. Oftentimes, the poison injection damage at low health was really tough to deal with, but now it's just more impressive all the time with a little bit less execute damage. So I'll take it. Destruction Staff. Destructive Touch. Redesign this ability and its morphs to function as a dot. All right. Reduce the base cost. So this is Destructive Reach. Okay. Reduce the initial hit damage by approximately 17%, but increase the dot by approximately 167%. This ability no longer grants additional bonuses depending on the staff you're using. Okay. This ability now gains 1.1% damage and rank for the entire ability. Reduce the range to 15 meters from 17. Destructive Reach. Destructive Reach no longer deals damage over time. Flame Clench knocks the target back. So Destructive Reach gives you the snares or knockdowns and just okay. So Clench will give you the really nice dot, but Destructive Reach, the one that does the CC, will no longer give you the dot. So you either go with the CC or you go with the really nice damage over time effect. Interesting. We'll have to test that as well. Force Shock. Increase the damage of this ability of S'mores by approximately 11%. Okay. Increase the chance to apply an Elemental Sand effect to 10% from 3% since each hit is a direct damage attack. Crushing Shock. This ability no longer ranks up in damage, but instead decreases cost down to 2430. Wow. Force Pulse, this morph no longer ranks up in damage in initial hits, but instead ranks up in the cleave damage it deals. Also increases the damage of the cleave attacks by approximately 172%. Wow. Okay. Asylum Destro builds incoming. Pulsar, reduce the duration of the minor mangle its ability to 7 seconds from 30 seconds, which ranks up to 10 seconds. This morph now also increases the chance of applying an type status effects to 15% instead of the base 5. Wall of Elements, increase the duration. These abilities will now rank up, decrease the cost. Okay. So we got a lot to go through here. There's a lot of quality of life changes. Force Pulse having a cleave is very, very interesting. And the destructive reach changes are going to be huge for PvP because a lot of people are using the Master Staffs. So if you use the one with the longer range, you get the knockdown, but you don't get the dot, which isn't going to really impact Sorks because, you know, that's your main combination. But now the closer range one will give you another nasty dot, which could be very, very effective for like mag DKs. So very, very interesting stuff. Restoration Staff, Blessing and Protection, reduce the cost, increase the healing abilities by 10%, Blessing and Restoration Morph. Increase the healing of this ability by approximately 3% since it was missing the rank up. This ability now lasts 16 seconds instead of 15. All right. Combat Prayer, this ability now ranks up by 1.1%, but instead reduces the cost. This ability's Minor Berserk will no longer hit pets since they're already gained their owner's Minor Berserk. All right. Force Siphon. No longer have a cast time since they are purely debuff skills such as weakness to elements. The duration of this ability now begins at 18 seconds, which ranks up to 24 seconds, and both morphs will rank up to 30 seconds in total. Fix an issue where these abilities would aggro your target. Grand Healing converted this ability to a true AoE heal over time rather than a hybrid spammable hybrid hot. Okay. Grand Healing is Healing Springs, so you get the burst heal with the heal over time. And so now this is a true heal over time instead of a burst heal over time. Increase the duration from 3 seconds to 8 seconds, but you may only have one active at a time. Wow. Reduce the healing per tick by approximately 44%. Awesome. Reduce the cost. Okay. Healing Springs Morph. This ability now grants 30 magic every time it heals an ally rather than restoring 330 magicka for up to 3 allies healed by the initial hit. This will result in a higher return if you hit all 6 targets for the full duration, but will require more coordination to obtain. Alright. Illustrious Healing. This ability continues to increase the duration. The new duration is 9 seconds, which ranks up to 12 seconds at rank 4. Regeneration. Increase the healing per tick by approximately 98%, but reduce the duration to 10 seconds, and now only hits 1 ally per cast. Okay. Increase the cost. Rapid Regen. This morph now doubles the frequency, but halves the duration. Mutagen. Increase the burst heal value. This morph by approximately 93%. So huge healing changes. Steadfast Ward. Huge sweeping healing changes. Going more towards smart-based healing, which I actually agree with. I think healing has been too easy, in my opinion. It's too easy to heal a group as it is, and so it's really hard to differentiate the good healers from just the ones that are spamming buttons. And so if you're a good healer, you're not really going to be impacted by a lot of this. But yeah, like I like this quite a bit, actually. Light Armor. Annulment. Reduce the shield size of this ability and its morphs by approximately 9%. This was incoming. Harness Magicka is just way too powerful of a damage shield, in my opinion, so it needed a nerf at some point. Harness Magicka. This morph no longer returns 3% of your max Magicka when absorbing spell attacks. Instead, it restores 5% of the ability's cost whenever it absorbs any damage. Note this value continues to increase per piece of Light Armor worn. It can still only occur up to 3 times per cast. Okay. We'll have to look at this on the tooltip. But yeah, Harness Magicka was just such an easy way to sustain. Like, you had Harness up and you had high Magicka pools, you could just sustain if you're fighting one Magicka class, and you didn't need recovery. A lot of my Magicka builds right now are using Harness Magicka with high Magicka, and so even though I don't have low recovery, I could sustain because of Harness Magicka. This skill has been broken for like 2 to 3 years. It's basically been broken for the entire duration of the game, and I assumed it was just never going to get fixed because it should have been fixed a long time ago. We'll have to see exactly what this is, but yeah, this may make Dampen Magic the better alternative. We'll have to see. This is a big... I don't want to gloss over this too much, guys, but this is a big change for Magicka classes. This is a big change to the overall sustain of a Magicka class and the amount of damage they can mitigate. You're going to have to you're going to have to essentially like build in more recovery, which means like Magicka classes aren't going to be as bursty next patch as they are now. I think this is a good quality of life change, and this is exactly what I was hoping they were going to do with this skill, while also maintaining the value of like running light arm and all these other things, because Magicka was slightly overperforming, and I didn't want them to hit every single aspect of what was causing Magicka to be very powerful. I only wanted them to hit like one or two, and this was like the main culprit that will really bring it in line with everybody else, in my opinion. Evasion. Reduced the base cost of this ability to 3213 from 3672. So they reduced the cost. Also added a new function. If you are hit with an area of effect attacked while the ability is active, you gain Major Expedition. Okay. That's a nice little shuffle change. Elude. Each piece of medium armor now increases the duration of the Major Evasion by 2 seconds, up from 1 second. Elude also increases the duration of Major Expedition, but only by 1 second per piece of medium armor. So you can have up to 7 seconds of Major Expedition if you're hit with an AoE attack. So in PvP, you're just going to have this up all the time. Medium armor builds are going to be fast as shit. Wow. Shuffle. Increase the snare and immobilization immunity granted per piece of medium armor worn to 1 second from 0.5 seconds. So excellent. So they doubled the snare removal duration. It was an expensive ability. It really wasn't worth running, to be honest. Like, Shuffle cost too much for what it was providing, and so they needed to do something. And now this is giving Medium the ability to kite and move around. It might be, I'm not going to say it's a little too strong, but having 7 seconds of Major Expedition just by wearing Medium is very, very interesting. So we're going to have to test this. Elude looks very interesting, because you already get Major Evasion from running forward, momentum, or rally, which most builds are. So having Major Evasion just doesn't mean a whole lot because you already have it. So getting that Major Expedition buff is what would be worth having on your bar. Heavy Armor. Immovable. Reworked this ability in Smorphs and shifted the names around to be slightly more appropriate. Immovable is one of the most useless skills in the game. This base ability is now called Unstoppable. Reduce the base cost by a lot, which gets 15% cost reduction, taking it to 3213. Okay. Increase the duration of the CC immunity granted to 6 seconds. While the CC immunity persists, you now have 65% reduced movement speed. You cannot be stopped, but that power comes at a great cost. Okay. Immovable Brute. Rename this morph to Unstoppable Brute. It no longer passively reduces the cost of CC break while slotted, but instead reduces the cost of CC breaking while the Major Ward and Resolve are active. Okay. Increase the cost reduction per piece of heavy armor worn to 5% from 4%. This morph also gains cost reduction as it ranks up. Okay, we'll have to look at this because I have not touched Immovable ever on any build, so we'll have to see what this actually does. Unstoppable. Rename this to Immovable. This morph no longer increases the duration of the ability. Instead, while the snare persists, it increases the amount of damage you can block by 5% per piece of heavy armor worn, but also increases snare potency by 5%. If you're in all 7 pieces of heavy armor, you will truly be immovable. Unless elite difficulty enemies hit you with a special move, they don't care if you think you're immovable. Interesting. That's a lot of damage mitigation while blocking. Interesting. Very, very interesting. We're gonna have to look at both these. Soul Magic, Soul Strike, which is Soul Assault. Increase the damage per tick of this for this ability and its morphs by approximately 22%. But increase the time it takes to deal its total damage to 5 seconds from 2.9 to help reduce the bursting nature of the ultimate. This also means the CC immunity granted from activating this ability lasts the 5 seconds instead of only 2.9. Okay, so this is going to be nice for Nightblades. Everybody else, it's going to be a huge stam drain with less burst. Increase the reveal on this ability and its morphs to 3 seconds from 2 seconds. Okay, just kidding. Maybe not for Nightblades. Increase the base cost to 175 ultimate from 100 ultimate. This needed to happen too. This morph's explosion no longer requires the target to die in order to occur. Instead, when the channel is completed or ends early, it will detonate. Reduce the damage of the explosion by approximately 37%. Fix an issue where the explosion was not applying. Okay. Soul Trap. This ability is restructured to fit our single target dot standards. Since this ability is the first ability you have access to, it will dynamically scale with your offensive stats with some extra detection abilities. If your weapon damage is higher, it will deal physical damage, but if your spell damage is higher, it will deal magic damage. Increase the damage per tick by approximately 161%. Remove the 2-second delay from these abilities. Okay, we'll have to try Soul Trap because on a few builds. We'll have to look at this too. Reduce the cost of Bat Swarm, increase the duration to 7 seconds from 5 seconds, increase the damage dealt by 20% per tick. Devouring Swarm got an increase in cost. The heal from this ability has been brought into standards, which will result in no real set percentage change in power due to previous version having several issues with scaling. The weapon damage scaling of this ability was approximately 800% weaker than the spell damage scaling, while the stamina scaling was 1500% weaker than the magicka scaling. The heal will now scale for half the damage base coefficient. Okay. Clouding Swarm. Increase the cost. Reduce the damage. Okay. Vampire changes. We are almost done, guys. Drain Essence. Remove the 1 second delay on this ability. It's more the channel from this ability no longer dodged. Okay. Reduce the cost of Misform. This ability now lasts 4 seconds. This ability now ranks up. Okay. Werewolf. Many werewolf skills have been adjusted in terms of damage cost and healing to ensure that they meet the intended goal of werewolf experience. A fast-paced threat is a terrifying foe on the battlefield. Activating werewolf abilities should feel distinct in nature from other abilities in terms of their consequences. They should feel more powerful but more costly. With our ongoing ability standard audit, we've taken werewolf and set their abilities to be 25% more per cast, meaning when compared to other similar ability category, the werewolf version should deal 25% more damage but cost 25% more. Note this value is subject to change. We're also aware of some werewolf abilities feeling bare in nature, such as Pounce, and are currently investigating some additional variation to help spice up the combat approach. So Hircine's Bounty, increase the cost of its morph by 25%, which I'm pretty sure is the heal. Reduce the healing to 37.5% of your max health from 45%, which is 25% stronger than the standard 30%. Hircine's Rage, increase the duration of Major Brutality. Hircine's Fortitude, this morph now. Alright, increase the cost of healing. That's going to be a big change. Infectious Claws, increase the cost of this ability. Its morphs to 34. Okay, so small increase in cost. Increase the damage of the initial hit by 25%, so more impact damage. Reduce the damage over time of these abilities by approximately 11%. Okay. Infectious Claws are just a really nasty way to dot people down. Running a bunch of dots with the claws, just easy to sustain and just easy pressure. Piercing Howl, reduce cost of this ability, and reduce the damage dealt by 14%, so less pressure. Howl of Agony, this morph no longer ranks up, increase the damage dealt on a feared target. Okay, so you have to fear somebody and then you get up to 33%. So this is a buff as long as you do damage to somebody feared. So you get a little bit more burst that way, but normally it's a nerf. Pounce, decrease the base cost of its ability and its morphs. Roar, increase the cost of this ability. Reduce the radius, increase the duration. Okay. Werewolf Transformation, reduce the damage dealt by your light and heavy attacks with this ability and its morphs by approximately 17%. Okay. Increase the range of the light attacks to 7 meters from 5 meters and the heavy attacks to 10 meters from 7 meters. This is done to help preserve the same distance in standard form since your character size increase is not applying to the range of your abilities, causing your attacks to appear as if they lost range. Okay, that makes sense. This ability in the Pack Leader morph no longer apply a bleed to enemies hit with light attacks or deal area damage with heavy attacks. Wow, that's a pretty big nerf to werewolves. Honestly, the most annoying thing about werewolves is how tanky they are, how big it's a big combination, how tanky they are, how big their heals are, and how easily they can keep applying dots while really not doing anything. So all they have to do is light attack you, and they're applying a bleed that went through your resistances, and you could purify it, but then they would just light attack you and restack it. So there's just not much you could do about fighting 1 or 2 werewolves by yourself. Like, you're just essentially dead. Pack Leader direwolves can no longer be targeted or die. That's nice. So this seems bad, but the fact that they can no longer be targeted means that when you're fighting a werewolf and you go to drop a meteor or an incap or any sort of ultimate, you will no longer target the direwolf. I can't tell you how annoying it is to try and hit a werewolf or like fighting multiple werewolves and you drop an ult on one of the direwolves and it just comes right back. That's actually a nice change for fighting werewolves in my opinion. Reduce the damage of the direwolf's Gnash by approximately 70% and decrease the frequency. Okay, so big nerf to what they do. Gnash now applies minor maim to enemies hit for 4 seconds. So pack leader gets minor maim to their resistances. So that's a buff in their tankiness. Reduce the damage of the lunge attack by approximately 60%. Okay. Alright, so overall, it looks like werewolves no longer have the cheesy dot damage. They don't have as much burst. They have more survivability. The pack leader does. And they have more range. Okay. Werewolf Berserker Morph, increase the damage of the bleed from your light attacks by 25%. The Werewolf Morphs were initially designed to have Pack Leader emphasized on utility, while Berserker was meant to be the offensive and raw damage choice. Due to the Direwolf's damage and attack speed, Berserker was constantly eclipsed, and Pack Leader wasn't providing much utility other than causing target complications for enemies. Exactly. Now, Pack Leader allows your doggos to enfeeble your foes, while Berserker lets you rip and tear. Okay. That's nice. Fighters Guild. Fixed an issue where Balorg and hulking werewolves were not being considered werewolves. Okay, circle protection. Reduce the cost of circle protection by a lot. 8,000 to 3,902. Fixed an issue with this ability in Smorphs where you could not gain minor protection. Okay, Dawnbreaker. This ability in Smorphs now all have a minor cast time to match their animations of slamming down the glorious Dawnbreaker. Canceling the ultimate will not consume resources, and this cannot be bashed interrupted from abilities. Okay, so you can no longer animation cancel Dawnbreaker. So that makes sense. I animation Dawnbreaker, I think most people do. But it hits so hard, like you want to be able to have that ability to react. And so now that just that 1 second, that small cast time allows you to see it coming, and you could potentially block the Dawnbreaker instead of getting slapped with like 10 to 15k damage. And it cannot be bashed or interrupted. So it's just going to, a small animation gives you that little bit of reaction time. Increase the damage of the dot by 1.1%. This ability in its morphs no longer has the 6-person target cap, since the total area is smaller than other ultimates such as Dragon Leap or Permafrost. Okay, that's a big change. So you can hit more than 6 people with Dawnbreaker. That's important to know. Flawless Dawnbreaker, this no longer passively increases your weapon damage by 5% for slotting it. Instead, it grants you 300 weapon damage for 14 seconds. Which ranks up to 20 seconds at rank 4. This morph no longer increases damage by 1.1% per rank. Okay. Dawnbreaker Smiting. This morph now properly gain a 20% damage increase, which will result in a 1% damage loss. Alright. So big Dawnbreaker changes. Kind of a nerf in general. Well, you can now react to Dawnbreaker, but now it hits more people. So, it's just different changes, I guess. Expert Hunter. Evil Hunter fixed an issue where this ability's morphs cost more than its original form. This morph no longer grants 25% reduced stamina cost to fighter abilities. Instead, it grants up to 25% damage dealt with non-ultimate fighter guild abilities. Wow. So Evil Hunter plus Silver, 25% more damage to like Silver Leash or Trap. Interesting. So you already get the crit bonus by having this on your bar, and it reveals Nightblades. But 25%. Wow. We're going to have to look at that. Camel Hunter Morph. This ability will no longer cost more than the base form and no longer grants minor berserk from successful sneak attacks. It now grants minor berserk from dealing critical damage from an enemy's flank. I like that. Decrease the duration of minor berserk to 5 seconds from 10 seconds. Okay. Silver Bolts. This ability has been brought into our spammable category and will be balanced as such. Increase the damage dealt by approximately 12.5%. Silver Bolt chain buffs incoming. Reduce the cost. This ability no longer snares enemies hit. Spin them crossbows. Silver Shards. This ability now hits all nearby enemies to your original target instead of having a cap. AoE damage is now 25% weaker than the initial hit instead of 50%. AoE damage now ranks up. Okay. Silver Bolts decrease the damage by 25%, increase the cost, reduce the snare. These changes will allow ability to perform much closer to other gap closer creator abilities. These Silver Bolt changes are huge when paired with Camo Hunter. That's interesting. Trap Beast, increase the duration, 10 seconds from 6 seconds. Minor Force will now properly line up. Reduce the damage per tick by approximately 6%. Reduce the duration of the mobilize on all morphs to 2 seconds. All right. Reduce the base cost to 32.40. All right. Entropy is now a dot instead of a heal over time and buff. Increase the cost of this by a lot. No longer a heal over time for entropy for either one. Increase the damage from all morphs by 220%. Decrease the duration to 10 seconds from 12 seconds. Equilibrium. Major Ward and Resolve will now begin their duration. Okay, Fire Rune, Meteor. Remove the 6-person target cap from this ability. It's morphs since it covers a smaller area than standard AoE ultimates. So a big Meteor buff. Reduce the damage over time from this ability by 13%. Fix an issue where this ability and its morphs would fail to deal damage if your character died after casting it. Excellent. Psijic Order, Meditate, slightly reduce the healing and resource return of this ability and its morphs to land on whole numbers. Blood Altar, this ability and its morphs no longer have cast time and now cost health rather than magicka. Blood Feast and Blood Funnel. Bone Shield. Bone Wall. Inner Fire. Necrotic Orb. None of these are like super great for PvP, so I'm just going to kind of skip them. Caltrop's got to reduce some cost. Increase the snare. Potency. Okay. Reduce the damage per tick by a big reduced damage to Caltrops. Now it's more of a utility skill. So 50% snare with a reduction in 60% damage per tick. Interesting. Magic Cadet. Reduce the cast time of this ability and the inevitable detonation morph to 1 second from 1.5, so no cast time here basically. Increase the damage of all morphs by approximately 7% to ensure they deal our AoE damage standards. Reduce the base cost of all morphs. Remove the maximum limit to the target scaling of these abilities so they may actually combat large groups of enemies for their intended design. Removed the maximum limit to the target scaling of these abilities. So if you hit a bunch of people, you're just essentially going to nuke them. We're going to have to test this as well, guys. We're going to have to go read the tooltips, but I mean, what is Magic Cadet saying here? Like, so it used to do up to like 100% more damage, and it's, what was it, like 20% per target hit. So now like you can actually be like a pure kamikaze with Magic Cadet, like if people are stacked all on top of each other. Bombers are going to come back in full force. Wow. Okay. We're going to have to look at that because this is a huge change, and I'm all for it. I'm not going to lie. Like, if you're stacked in a group and your entire goal is to like not die by being standing next to somebody, you deserve to be kamikazed, in my opinion. You know, spread out and fight. Rapid maneuver, reduce the cost of this ability and its morphs to 68.85. Okay. Rapid maneuvers, whatever. Vigor. Adhere this ability to our single target hot standards. Okay. Vigor and Resolving Vigor now only heal the caster. Increase the okay, so you still have Echoing Vigor, which will heal everybody, but Resolving Vigor you can now no longer stack with people. So I've had Vigors procced on me. You can now no longer provide that utility with Resolving Vigor. Interesting. Increase the duration to 10 seconds from 5 seconds, but decrease the tick frequency to 2 seconds from 1 second. Increase the healing per tick by approximately 85%. Okay, so each time you get this tick, it's an overall reduction in the amount of healing. Because if this was 100% every 2 seconds, it would be the same. So overall, Vigor is getting nerfed a little bit in the amount of healing it does, but you get a reduced cost. A big amount of reduced cost. It's like 30%. Okay. Big Vigor changes. I guess it goes in line with the other healing changes. No longer will you have like these AoE group heals where people just don't die. Like you have your single target heals for yourself, and you need a healer for the other AoE heals. And so you combine these heals, these stamina heals, with things like Magic Cadet no longer having a cap. You're going to get some, like this is a huge nerf to Zergs in general. Like all the healing changes are just great for small scale people. Because in general, like Like stacking vigors is nice. Like don't get me wrong, that's going to be disappointing. But at the same time, like I'm typically playing with somebody that knows how to defend themselves anyway. So my vigor isn't really helping them when they're healing themselves. You know what I mean? So plus that's a reduced cost, meaning you can stack more into damage. Interesting stuff. Echoing Vigor. It's more reintroduce the area of effect healing capability, healing up to 6 allies in a 15-meter radius. So you could still have AoE healing, but you have to take the reduced healing with Echoing Vigor. So one's individual, the other one's, everybody. Very, very interesting. Emperor, you can no longer generate ultimate while in transformation, such as Bone Goliath or Werewolf, while you're Emperor. Interesting. Barrier, this ability and its morphs will now affect up to 12 grouped allies instead of 6. Reduce the heal per take. Replenishing Barrier. Okay, Guard, Purge. Increase the amount of negative effects. Instantly remove 3 from 2. This ability now ranks as a cost reduction. Okay. So Efficient Purge got nerfed a little bit. Revealing Flare. Siege Shield. Double Bloody Mara got hit. Reduced max health by 14 and Magicka by 13%. Okay. Affliction. Briarheart. Defensive position. I will post this in the video. I'm just trying to go through the big ones. Heemjaw, Major Berserk granted from this set now lasts 5 seconds, up from 3 seconds, but now only works on enemies who you are actively in combat with. Nice change for Heemjaws. Like, this is really nice. Krogs, Kind's Kiss, Merciless Charge, Pillar of Nirn. Pillar of Nirn increased the bleed damage by 25%. Plague Doctor got a reduction in health again. Quick Serpent, Roar of Alkosh, Savage Werewolf. Shadow of the Red Mountain. Torix Pack, this item set will no longer increase the damage of Oblivion damage enchantments. It will still, however, decrease their cooldown. Okay, that makes sense. They want... Okay. Twin Sisters, increase the damage over time from this item set by approximately 67%, but the dot now happens over 10 seconds instead of 8. So more damage, but over time. Veldrath, this item's proc can no longer hit the same monster multiple times. Okay. Warrior's Fury. They really threw this one in all the way at the bottom. The set now procs have taking damage rather than only critical damage, so a buff for Fury. Reduce the duration of the buff to 5 seconds from 6 seconds, which is fine. Like that's fine if it's all damage taken. Like you're going to stack this more. The stacking bonus can now only occur once every half second. Okay. Reduce the total. Still, like you're still going, if you're fighting 2 or 3 people, this is going to stack all the time since it's all damage. Reduce the total number of stacks to 20 from 25, resulting in a 150 weapon damage reduction. Upon reaching 20 stacks, the bonus can no longer refresh, but will double in duration. So this is very similar to 7th, to how Ravager procs, but instead of dealing damage, it's how you take it. And so people are going to look at this, and I think it was 730, and now this is what? So it's you still get 600 weapon damage with Warrior's Fury. It's easier to proc, and when you get to the maximum procs, it lasts for 10 seconds, and it goes away. And so you won't be at the max Warrior's Fury proc, but if you watch people on PC when they're fighting multiple groups, very rarely are they ever at like the max Fury proc all the time anyways. So they are in fights where they're leaping on people and all this other stuff, but when they have to line of sight, the ticks come off rather quickly and then they build back up. This is going to be easier to proc. You're going to be at the maximum bonus for longer. 10 seconds of 600 weapon damage is nice. That just procs off of taking damage. So every half second, so literally every second you're going to get 2 of these. And so it's going to take you 10 seconds to get to the maximum bonus. Then you're going to have it for 10 seconds. And then it's going to go away and you're going to start stacking again. And so I don't think this is bad, guys. This is just my opinion. I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, wow, Warrior's Fury sucks, Fury sucks. I don't think it sucks. Losing 150 damage isn't a huge change. How it procs and how it... you're still going to... Having the cap... being at 600, in my opinion, is more valuable than, being at the cap fighting severely outnumbered. Like I'd rather have this than the old set, and I've talked about this a lot, but the problem with Fury is as soon as like you could be fighting 2 or 3 people and you could do a shit ton of damage to them, and if they go on the defensive, these stacks start going away. Now, if you're at the cap of Warrior's Fury and they go on the defensive because you're just shitting on them, you have 10 seconds to dish out your damage and before the stacks start falling off. And so I like that a little bit more because you have 10 seconds to just dish out what you have to dish out. So I think this is just a better set. I mean, you'd get less max burst, but you're going to have more reliable burst. So I'm still going to use Warrior's Fury. It's subject to change, obviously. I mean, maybe this doesn't work the way I'm reading it. You know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think this is very, very nice still. Like, this is still going to be one of the best in slot armor sets in the game. Alliance War and PvP. Okay. Volendrung had a nerf. All right, art and animation, combat and gameplay, monsters, crafting and economy. We're almost to the end, guys. Really long video. I hope this is interesting. We'll have to provide like a Cliff's Notes for all this, but good stuff overall. Like I really enjoy these changes. I think these changes overall are good. No longer is healing more like it's more smart healing now than stupid healing. I'm just gonna say it that way, but it's too easy to just keep people healed to full. Healers were way too powerful, so it makes sense that you kind of nerf some of their abilities with like healing springs and mutagen and all that. So it only hitting one person is nice. The stack of vigors is going to be a change, but like less healing means that people will die in PvP more. We should get less latency and lag. It also promotes people defending themselves a lot more. So if you can't defend yourself, you're going to die faster unless you're running with a good healer that knows how to run heals. So all these things are very beneficial, and on top of that, the Magic Adept change is pretty huge. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please provide it in the section below. I'm sure I missed out something because these are massive, massive changes. But overall, like I said, like I'm a little disappointed in the heroic slash changes, but they buffed Power Bash. So you can use Shield Charge as your CC with Power Bash as your spammable. I think that will probably be the way to go for Sword and Board builds next patch. From what it looks like on paper, D-Swing got a nice buff. Onslaught got a really nice buff. That's probably the biggest change of all in my opinion. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.